What's going on, guys? This is Mike with the 1% Mindset Podcast. I hope you're doing absolutely amazing. Currently recording this. This is November 9th. So this episode will probably actually air tomorrow, November 10th. So I'm extremely excited about this episode. Why? Because I feel like I'm back. Right, we're on episode, I believe, I don't know, this is 123, 124. So we're a couple episodes in, but after so many episodes, I feel like I'm back. I had the opportunity first and foremost to look at a few episodes that I've done in the past. I started doing this back in, I started interviewing people for the first time at the end of 2017. I created a podcast. I started an actual podcast in 2018. I was doing morning motivations. I was excited. I was pumped. My energy was good. And then somewhere along the line, things started to die out. I tried to revive it in 2019. Started to die a little bit again. I was a little inconsistent. And in 2020, the pandemic hit. And then I started to say, man, I don't want to bring the energy, and the hype. I want people to get some value. And I started to get outside of myself a little bit, outside of my experience. And then I met with my mentor, and I was speaking to him, and I realized that I have to stay authentic and true to me. One of the things he said, Mike, you're not confused. You put in the work, you have value, you're providing people with information that they need to hear. You just don't trust you. That's why you don't promote you. That's why you don't push you. We've been dealing with this for years now. This isn't something brand new, right? It's great that you interview people, but you have so much value yourself, and you're not even putting that in the forefront because you feel like you don't offer enough to people. You don't trust you enough that you utilize other people. Right. And so my message today, and again, this podcast isn't going to be super long, but there's going to be something behind, it's interesting. Right. And I said this on my morning motivation podcast, episode 72, that dropped today. And if you guys haven't, just type in the 1% Mindset presents morning motivation, episode 72. I believe I titled it, I don't even remember what I titled it right now. Authentically you, something to that nature. And I remember telling a story. I had a friend in college, and a friend in high school. They're two separate homegirls that I had. And I noticed they did the same thing, the same exact thing. They would say, hey, my name is X. Oh, say, hey, my name is Nancy. I'm from New York and I'm a Scorpio. Right. I had another friend, Lakivia Keeve, and she would say, hey, my name is Lakivia. I'm from Dade County and I'm a Scorpio. And I always thought it was so funny, right? It's so funny that these two individuals, they said their name, where they're from, and I'm a Scorpio, right? And in my head, I'm like, nobody cares. Who cares that you're a Scorpio? Like, I don't care. But they took such pride in their sign, right? That they were authentic to who they were, to themselves, that they didn't care, right? Like, they put it in the forefront. And what it made me realize, and what I started to understand in doing that, was, oh, snap. Oh, snap, right? Like, I have gifts that I need to share, and I don't trust myself to put myself in the forefront, to say, like, yo, I own this space because I can do this. I'm an author. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a speaker. I'm an art, whatever that looks like for you. Right? I didn't own that. And because there's hesitation, I stopped trusting myself. Oh, there's people who's been doing it longer than me. I'm not that great at it. I need, whatever the excuses that were made. And I was like, man, I set myself up for a psychological wall I hit. Once I got to a certain space in a certain place, I started to hit a wall to where what I was saying, right, although I felt it, I stopped speaking with as much conviction. Right? I didn't trust what I was saying because I didn't fully believe it. Right? So the conviction wasn't there, number one. And when the conviction wasn't there, there starts to become hesitancy in your voice and in what you're saying. Excuse me. And when there's hesitancy, then doubt starts to creep in. So now I'm starting to doubt my actual gifts, what I'm good at, right? Because I'm not saying fake it till you make it, right? So hear me clearly when I say that. because a lot of people try to fake it till they make it. Again, I always just say I hate social media because it's not real, right? But there's also a space where if you're actually putting in the work, right here, if you're actually putting in the work, then, and you're still not trusting you, then you're putting yourself at, then you're still putting yourself at a disadvantage, right? You've hit a wall each and every, you get to a certain place like, yo, I'm killing it. I think I'm doing good, but I want to kind of hide on the back burner because I'm not great. It's like, bro, like, when are you ever going to be in a place where you feel comfortable? There's nothing that's ever going to be perfect, ever. But you stopped. It's when you stop trying to be perfect and you just do, if you're doing, right? And it's very important I say this because there's a lot of people that think that they're just going to do, that think they're going to fake it till they make it, promote all this stuff and not actually do the work, that things start to change. Right? Then I can get to call you out on your BS. But if you're putting in the work, if you're doing what you're supposed to do each and every single day, chipping away, chipping at it, then you have no choice but to continue to get better. And how are you going to start to grow your audience, grow in your space if nobody knows? There was a quote I saw, and I'm reading this book called Wealth Choice. I just finished it up, and I'm paraphrasing, but it said something to the effect of, what if you were someone and no one knew it? Right? Like, that stood out to me because it's like, yo, what if you were somebody and no one knew it? And no one knew it because I was afraid to tell people, to let people know who I am, what I do, because I didn't trust me, even though I've been putting in the work. So I put on this persona of somebody else, right? Either pretending like I'm somebody else or pretending like, yo, I'm not that beast. I'm okay. Deflecting my gifts and who I'm supposed to be or who I want to become because I don't trust me. Right? So let's think about some of the reasons why people don't actually trust themselves, right? Because I think that's also important to know. Well, one of the reasons you don't trust yourself is because you're in a comparison space, right? You have this imposter syndrome, like, man, this person is doing all this amazing things that you think they're doing, quote unquote. So because you're trying to compare yourself to this next person, you don't feel like you're good enough. And when you don't feel like you're good enough, then doubt starts to creep in. So now, guess what? Now I don't trust me. I stopped trusting me because I don't compare to this next individual, to this next human being. How crazy does that sound? I don't trust me because I'm comparing myself to another human being who has a completely different story than I do. So that's one reason, right? You got imposter syndrome because you're in a space of comparison and you don't think you fit or you belong, right? But if you were doing something consistently and you had all the fans in the world, right? You're just going to continue to produce because you believe that what you're doing makes sense, 100%. But it's when no one's watching, right? You see people, you see the likes and the shares and all of this social media stuff that in reality doesn't matter. It starts to change things. It completely starts to change things. So that's the first thing, right? You lack trust because of imposter syndrome. The second thing, right, where you lack trust, you lack disbelief, is because you don't want success. You don't want the responsibility that it comes with to have success. You can say like, yo, I want success, I want money, I want whatever it is that you so desire that you want. The problem is, to whom much is given, much is required. So although you want it, you don't want the work that is involved with it, right? It looks sweet on the surface, but there's work that's required for you to either get where you want to go and then not only get there, maintain there, right? You're afraid of the work it may take. You're afraid of the responsibility that is going to put on you. Because there's also responsibility that's there when it comes to putting in, when it comes to getting to a certain place and staying. There's responsibility. You have a responsibility to the people who are watching you, the people that you're educating, the people that trust you. There's a responsibility there that's required. Are you ready to take on that responsibility? Because that's also important. That's important to figure out. Like, are you ready to take on that responsibility? Because if you're not, that can be another reason where you're like, I don't want it. I've told this story before. In 10th grade, I went to States in track. I ran track growing up all my life, took a couple of years off, came back, moved to Florida, took about a year, got in shape. I started to get really good. By 11th grade, those expectations for me, had expectations. And I wasn't sure I wanted those expectations. Yes, I enjoyed running. I enjoyed my teammates. I enjoyed traveling. But the expectation for me required me to practice more than I wanted to. It required, like, I just didn't want those responsibilities. I just didn't. And because I didn't want those responsibilities, I said, I'm good. Right? Because when you have certain expectations of success of what you want, there's responsibilities required. Are you ready for those responsibilities? Are you ready to put in the work? And don't just say, absolutely. Think about what's required. Think about the scrutiny that you can face, right? Because yes, as you go up the chain, scrutiny will come. Situations will happen. Things may, you have more of a light on you. Right? It's like politicians, right? Or anybody with fame. Once you have certain responsibilities or certain expectations, now you're looked at in a whole different space, a whole different light. Your personal life starts to become, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts to be put under a microscope. It starts to be put under a microscope. But with those responsibilities can high rewards, absolutely, but high responsibilities. Right. I was looking at this guy on Instagram. His name is Prince Donnell on Instagram. Donnell, I think his last name is Morris. Phenomenal brother. I love what he's been able to do with his company, Jumpin' Jack Tax. Right. And for the past few years, his wife was under little scrutiny with like entrepreneurs, and then it got released on, I believe it was Shade Room, that his wife is being sued by like the DA of Philly, right? And although, well, I don't know the story to speak too much on it to say if he knew or doesn't know. I don't know, but up until that point, his personal brand has become pretty clean. Like it was pretty clean. He was building out Jumpin' Jack Tax. He had a cologne line. Like it was a very reputable, smart brother that I think a lot of people learned a lot from, right? He provided a lot of value, high quality stuff, high quality work, and gave people opportunities, right? Had people franchising his Jumpin' Jack Tax. However, like I said, that scrutiny is real, right? So once the stuff happened with his wife, that's documented, right? So I'm not telling a story I'm not speaking about it. I'm not talking bad about it. But once that happened with his wife, over the last few days on social media, he's been ghost, right? For whatever reason, right? It could be, I don't know what the reason is, but with high power, high praise, with the success you want, there's a certain level of responsibility, not just for you, but the people around you, right? So you got to keep that in mind. Is this what you want, right? And I'm sure he's built for it. He'll bounce back. Things will adjust. What, again, I don't know the situation too much I can't give you details on it. What I can say is because of his platform, he's highly sought after. He has millions of people that follow him on different social media platforms. The one that I follow him on, he's been gone for the last 4 days, excuse me, from me recording this. And that's not by accident, right? Now his brand is in question because of who he's associated with. And regardless of what the investigation comes back or not, once you have some kind of scrutiny, you have to work twice as hard to clean up your reputation, clean up your brand. Is that something you want? Is that something you can deal? Is that something you can deal with? Is that something that's in your DNA? Right? Again, he'll be fine. I'm sure of it. But again, the further up you rise, the longer the fall, the harder the fall. So is that something, are you comfortable in your space of like, you know what? Hey, this is my glass ceiling. If I break this glass, I'm unaware of what's up there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there because it's a little scary. It's a little scary being there because I like to be by myself. I want to be behind the scenes. Great, cool. You can be behind the scenes, but still creating something great, you have expectations. That's just the reality. So as you start to look at some of the psychological walls that you've hit, that we as human beings hit, you can start to then address the real problem of like, hey, why am I not where I want to be? Why haven't I made it there? Right? When you start to address the real problem, the real reason that I'm not where I want to be is because I'm afraid of the scrutiny. I don't want the responsibility, whatever it looks like, then you can address that problem. The problem is we're in denial to what is. We start to blame circumstance for our situation. Stop blaming circumstances for situations because it's never the circumstance. We are in control with how we handle every single situation 100% of the time. And I'm not saying, because when I say that, people are like, well, but what if X, Y? That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, that is irrelevant. Situations and circumstances will always be there every single time. The response to that is what matters. I don't care. Me personally, I don't care what your situation is. I don't care what your circumstance is. Why? Because it does nothing. It does nothing for the betterment of who you want to be. My situation, my circumstance doesn't matter for myself. Whatever the hand that I'm dealt, I have to play it regardless. I'm not going to complain about it. What's the point? You complain about it, you cry about it, and then what? Right? I'm not, again, people handle situations the best they can, but blaming the situation is completely different. Blaming it is completely different. And as you start to adjust and understand that, things will then start to change. Right? I started to take responsibility for like, yo, Mike, why isn't your podcast bigger than it is? You have a lot of great value. You've put out a lot of great value. Why isn't your brand bigger than it is? Yo, I don't want the responsibility, Mike. I can look at myself and say, man, I don't want this responsibility. And because I don't want it, that's why it's not there. It's simple. Right? I'm not saying it's easy to get to where I want. It's simple, though. I have a simple solution to why my podcast doesn't have the numbers. I have a simple solution as to why I've been embarking in trading, why my trading hasn't been going as successful as I wanted, even though I've paid thousands, 5 figures in coaches over the years to get the trading that I wanted. It's not the coach. He's a beast when it comes to trading. It's me. It's not that I don't put in the work for the success of this podcast, or I don't put out great content. I put out great content. I'm going to own that. But it's me. I'm like, maybe I'm not feeling it. And maybe you feel this, right? I'm doing this podcast because maybe you're feeling similar to how I felt, and you're not owning your stuff. Own it. Right? If you speak with energy, give that energy. Give the energy. That's it. Right? I try to switch it up. I want you to guys to do this. And I was trying to get all articulate and, no. Me, I thrive off of energy, right? And this is authentically me. So when I'm put in a place to be authentic, I'm going to be authentic. And you can feel authenticity. Human beings can feel when someone's being authentic versus when they're not. Because when you're not being authentic, you're not being true to who you are, it starts to show. It shows up every single time. And when it shows up, then what? Now you're fake. Now you're a fraud. Now you're not real. That's the facts. That's the facts. So step into your truth, step into your power, break those walls in your head, right? Because there's no glass ceiling. There's no real ceiling there, but the ones that you place on yourself. No one can place anything on you that you don't let them. Yo, but Mike, man, I've been trying to grow in this company and, it's my boss. Get a new job. Right? I'm not saying quit it. Are you actively looking at better opportunities? Are you actively seeking something else? Or are you a victim of your circumstance? Feel that. Feel when I say that, because this is real life. This is real. This is real life stuff that I'm telling you. And if you start to feel into that, it will start to make sense. And you can start to be in a position that you can start to place yourself to have a better opportunity to be the best version of you 100% of the time. Like, you don't want to look back and be like, man, this is my last day. I gave today 40%. I gave the day 40%. No, you want to give 100% and start to own your space so you can break the walls. You can figure out how do I own my truth? How can I be authentically me and then grow into the human being that I'm meant to be? Because again, with the same quote, what if you were somebody and nobody knew it? What if? Something to think about. Anyway, guys, as per usual, I love you. Peace.